Putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, brushing up my tail.
Welcome to Hatcast.
It's a podcast about hats.
I'm Charles Bernhardt. Welcome to Hatcast.
The podcast about hats.
I'm Charles Berman.
I do like that you said Charles Bernhardson, which was pretty great.
I was trying to remember my name.
Yes, let's do it one more time. Welcome to Hatcast.
The podcast about hats.
I'm Carl Bernhardson.
And I'm Charles Berman. I may still leave in the other version.
And we're here to talk about hats.
And today, ladies and gentlemen, we're being seasonally appropriate once again.
Yes, it's important every once in a while to sort of throw a bone to the listeners and give them what they like, which is things that are happening right now. Now, I'm only guessing this because we hear back from nobody, but I feel like people enjoy tie-ins.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Or at least ties, which can be worn in conjunction with hats.
We've talked about ties that go with hats.
We don't hear from absolutely nobody.
Right, we hear from close friends and family.
Jeffrey, a listener, approached me in person.
Oh.
And he wanted to know if it counted that he had seen a fez in the wild, because he showed me a picture of him in childhood wearing one at Disneyland.
Oh.
With 3 other fez wearers.
I'd say that counts.
I think it counts.
Yeah.
Disneyland is an appropriate location for fez wearing.
Right. Well, we got derailed there a little bit, though. We didn't say what hat we're talking about that is seasonally appropriate.
That's right.
The end of May. It's graduation season. We're going to talk about the mortarboard, the academic cap, the square academic cap, as some people call it. And it's interesting. The last few hats, actually most of the hats we do, we've had a lot of trouble getting, research on and sort of detailed histories. We've got almost the opposite problem with this one, probably because it's
surfeit of information.
Yeah, probably because it's mostly worn by academics.
And academics have a tendency to do research.
And then write about it.
Yes. The Greek fisherman cap, often worn by fishermen.
Who sometimes write.
Right.
But historically have not always written.
And if we're looking for fish, fishermen will find it. If we're looking for information, academics will find it.
Right. That's their job. That's what institutions pay them for. Most of them do, a fair bit of research.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
So, without further ado, where did it come from? It is a funny-looking hat, and it's sort of single-purpose. Right?
Yes.
It's tied into academic ceremonies such as graduations.
Perhaps if you're being presented with an honorary doctorate.
That's about it. I think some parts of the world used to make you wear it while teaching in the distant past, but I'm not sure if that's true, and perhaps we can find out.
I think they used to make you wear academic caps of some kind.
Okay.
The mortarboard apparently has evolved from medieval fashions.
Right, especially medieval fashions of the church, right?
Right, and it says here that it's also called graduate cap, square, trencher, or corner cap, and it says that in the 16th and 17th centuries, the term corner cap was used.
Okay, because it has
4 corners.
4 corners. My hat, it has
4 corners.
4 corners has
my cap.
Yes.
It's a less common song. And I think there were occasions in which people who were teaching were required to wear this kind of cap.
Which would make sense. I guess it's a good way to identify who is the academic in the room.
And it says that it developed specifically from the Beretta.
Right. I guess to describe the Beretta, imagine sort of a skull-fitting cap with no brim, and then it
sort of goes outward.
Yes.
At a slant. And it's flat around and has a little point at the top.
Yes, sometimes a little pom-pom, but not always. And so I guess the mortar board is that, but unfolded completely. And
yes.
Totally flat on the top.
And with a board inside, hence the board, to keep it flat on top. And I have to say rather cheaply, because at this point in history, it's not something one is expected to wear in daily life.
Right. Unless you are a high-ranking university official who has to wear it to 30 graduation ceremonies a year, you're not going to invest a lot of money in a mortarboard. You're going to get a piece of cardboard covered in nylon attached to a flimsy single-ply cap. in the color of your university or school or just black.
Right. The Canterbury cap is worn by Anglicans. It's essentially a Beretta. It says there are many, many styles of it. It dates back to the 1590s. And it says here that in Anglican churches, clergy are entitled to wear the cap, which is not worn at service time. It forms part of the canonical outdoor clerical dress, along with the cassock, gown, and tippet.
So it's just their sort of day-to-day wear? Or
Right, that performs the function of showing I am a Anglican clergyman.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend wearing it if you're not.
No, that is a very specific kind of hat with a very specific meaning. It does lend to the whole concept of lying with hats.
Yes.
You could wear one if you wanted to pretend to be a clergyman.
But don't do that.
Right. That seems particularly unscrupulous.
Yes, I mean, unless you're in a play, in which case you probably will have a costume designer whose job it is to provide you with this spurious adornment of your head. Do not pretend to be a clergyman. I can't think of a good reason to do that.
You're probably committing some kind of fraud if you're pretending to be a clergyman.
Unless you've founded your own religious movement.
Right, in which case you are a clergyman.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, within the confines of
it may be a very small religion.
Yes. And if you would like to found a religious movement, please go ahead.
It's not our place to stop you.
I'm not attempting to stop you, no. Yeah. The Beretta was descended from the ancient Pileus head covering.
Okay.
Which is an ancient Greek one, which really just it looks sort of like a Phrygian cap almost. It's just sort of a conical head covering. So this is a cap which evolved very slowly over time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you have your basic cloth sack-shaped cap that you put on your head to keep it warm or to show that you have something on your head. And people just kept sticking things either pointing out of it or on top of it until one day we had the mortarboard.
Yeah.
Which is the most you can put on top of it by placing a board balancing on it.
Yes, it does come... The article about this Pileus comes, I'll digressively mention, with an illustration of a very valuable coin, which I would love someday to have.
Charles and I both enjoy coins from the ancient world.
Yes, and this is a commemorative of the assassination of Julius Caesar.
Really?
Yes, it was issued by Brutus, and you can see on it 2 daggers and a cap, which is the Pileus, which I believe, and we'll have to get into this in our episode about it, became the Cap of Liberty.
Right.
And Aid Mar, the Ides of March.
Ides of March, yeah. And did it become the Cap of Liberty because of its association with the murder of tyrants? Is that why the French revolutionaries picked it?
I always thought so, but I'm not positive, and that might have to be a cliffhanger.
Okay. It feels like something they would have done, though. When we do that episode, which will come up shortly, I think.
We've mentioned that hat as being on the state seal of New York, where we record this today.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, so very slow evolution to get to the mortarboard. One thing that I haven't had revealed to me yet, though, is where did the tassel come from? When did that get incorporated? Because the tassel, I mean, it feels like a Victorian addition, since they had tassels on their smoking caps and things like that.
Well, it just says that that's an entirely U.S. affectation.
The tassel?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it says that that's been added in the United States.
Okay.
Although it shows 2 British ones which have tassels on them. I've seen many old different kinds of caps that have tassels. I'm not sure. It doesn't mention the origin of the tassel. Now, when you wore one at did you graduate from high school?
I did, in fact, graduate from high school. And when I wore one, it did have a tassel. It was a green mortarboard, like a forest green, with a gold-colored tassel.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that these are worn at high school graduations, because they, I think, traditionally in Britain were associated with academic universities.
Right.
And I think it's sort of just got informally added at U.S. high schools to feed a sense of self-importance at having achieved high school. Yeah.
Right, which, I mean, that's the whole point of a graduation ceremony, is to impart a sense of self-importance and to say, you've succeeded in this task, and here's your fancy robe, and here's your fancy hat, and you're going to stand here, and someone's going to talk to you for a while and tell you about, how wonderful you are and the wonderful things you're going to do, and you can feel sort of elevated while you do that when you're wearing a sort of ancient feeling regalia,
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it says here at the University of Cambridge, undergraduates by ancient convention used to cut their tassels very short so that the tassel does not extend beyond the edge of the board. After they graduated, they wore the square cap with the tassel at the normal length. This convention has now fallen into disuse.
Huh.
Few people now wear headgear with academic dress at any time, and undergraduates in particular have no need to wear the cap. Yes, it was a student or an academical cap was to show that you were part of that profession.
Right.
Back to the Middle Ages at the university. And I think it perhaps needs to be mentioned that during the Middle Ages, divinity and membership in the clergy was closely tied with academics.
Right. Most, if not all, universities were in
religious
some way
institutions. Yeah. The priesthood were the keeper of the books. Mm-hmm. If you could read and you were not very wealthy, it was probably because you were a monk.
Right. And it was your job to maintain and know this information, which would explain why academic dress looks like things that monks would wear.
Right. Yeah. Were religious headgear and still are in certain cases. So this is... I find it interesting how this is frozen in time in accordance with the ceremony.
Yeah, it feels like, at least in the United States, it became very widespread to dress like this at a graduation around the 1920s. At least the photographs that I've seen seem to suggest that. I'm sure it was happening at universities earlier, but it became a part of... Well, for one thing, 1920s, 30s, that's when you start having high schools, public high schools, pretty much everywhere.
Education is becoming much more...
Right. So it's
broad.
It's what people thought to wear while performing this ceremony at the point in time when this ceremony became widespread throughout the world, right?
Right.
And it was no longer just a tiny group of people who wore funny clothes. It was a large group of people copying those outfits and then just continuing to do it every year forever. And then it's tradition.
Yeah. We're looking at some images here of the University of Paris. This one's in the 16th century, and caps that they're wearing look pretty similar. They're flat and broad at the top.
Right, they're just a little rounder, and don't seem to have a board.
Yeah, and this is clearly a classroom.
Yeah, you've got a professor type sitting in a throne. At one end, and then you have two long tables with very large books running sort of parallel to each other away from the throne, much like your average classroom today.
Yeah, and this is an older one, 1300s. The students wearing all sorts of varieties of hats.
Yeah.
But indoors, in class, wearing hats, and that was what was done. We're looking at several images of medieval universities, and all the people in these images are wearing hats, caps, or hoods of some variety.
Right. And that's true. It has become convention now for the hood to be a part of academic dress.
For a doctor. Although that's apparently a recent affectation. Yes. And there's also for master's degrees or doctors... what has been introduced is the Tudor Tap.
Okay.
Which in the U.S. is sometimes many-sided, and that is another very old kind of hat, which is revived and usually put in university colors and worn only in these ceremonies.
Right. It's interesting to see in academia this revival of otherwise dead hats, right?
Yes.
And bringing them back and making them relevant and forcing thousands of people to buy and wear them.
And I'll say we're probably getting many things wrong about these hats, but I'm qualifying the word wrong because it seems like there is a huge body of arcane and very specific data about when to wear what shape of hat, what color it must be, what color the tassel must be, and what the design of the hat must be. But this body of specific data shifts and changes very frequently over time and depending on what institution you're looking at.
Yes. It's there's no real standard. except maybe at certain institutions, and even then it seems to change pretty rapidly, which is funny for something that's supposed to be so staid and traditional, you know?
Right. It's, by the nature of tradition, always paradoxically in flux. When I went to high school, people were very adamant that when you wore the hat prior to the ceremony, you could have the tassel on one side of the square.
Okay.
And that once the ceremony was completed, you could put it on the other side.
Okay. I do remember hearing about that. I don't think it was something that we did. But it's, it's a nice little thing.
It feels important. It feels significant. There's no reason why it should be true.
Right.
But there's no reason not to do it.
Right. Well, it's
nice.
true if people say you need to do it, right?
Right.
It's a thing people do. It may not have, high level origins. It may just be someone at some school at some point thought this would be fun and people will like it. But we're talking about people putting things on their head. That's kind of the reasoning behind a lot of hats, right?
What you're saying with this hat is, I am getting or conferring a degree, or I have a degree and am present for the getting or conferring of one.
Right.
Now, if you go to college or university, or even more so high school, and you see a professor teaching the class while wearing this, something very odd is happening.
Right. Someone is doing something strange. Someone is taking this academic regalia a little too seriously.
Right.
Although, you see in movies set in the 20s and 30s, there's kind of a cliche of the professor wearing like a tweed suit and then a kind of shabby black academic robe over it that's covered in chalk. There's something charming about that. But that's the same thing, that's outdated in the same way that, most professors aren't wearing tweed suits with leather elbow patches at this point either, right?
Although that's a nice jacket and is not as strange as wearing an academic cap around.
No.
We're looking at images of people getting honorary degrees, and they're wearing all different varieties of medieval-style academic caps with tassels of all different colors. And they look quite academic. Here's Bill Cosby getting one, which I think has been removed now. But it looks like an octagonal purple one.
Yeah, that one's become popular lately. Here we have, is that James? Oh, Orlando Bloom wearing a very floppy,
large one. Yes, when people get honorary
next to someone who's wearing a very traditional mortarboard. These very, very obviously medieval hats look somewhat out of place even in academic regalia, right? Something feels a little bit contrived.
It's very contrived, and it's just meant to make people feel important, both for conferring and for getting the honorary degree.
Right.
Although I have to say, Dr. Johnson had to petition very hard to get an honorary degree so that he could set up a school. And that's why he's Dr. Johnson. It was based on an honorary degree.
Wait, really? What was... Do tell. This will be a fun little aside. Why did what is his honorary degree in, and why you would feel like at some point in his life he would have just ended up with a degree.
He went to Oxford, did not receive a degree.
Okay.
Shortage of funds.
Okay. Well, that'll do it.
He petitioned hard to get a degree so that he could teach. He did eventually receive it just before the publication of his dictionary in 1755, when Oxford University awarded him a Master of Arts. Then he got an honorary doctorate in 1765 from Trinity College Dublin, and in 1775 from Oxford University. Rather late in his life, really.
Yeah. I mean, he had accomplished a great deal before all of that. It's good to see that he was recognized, though.
Oh, yes.
And I wonder what kind of hat he wore.
He would have worn a tricorn hat.
Even at the ceremony?
Oh, at the ceremony? Well, no one knows. I don't know if anyone was there. But it probably would have been a variant of academic cap, yes.
Right. Now, in these sort of famous portraits of Johnson, is that a wig or was that his hair?
That is a wig.
Okay. I can't even imagine how someone's hair would grow in that shape.
It's a wig, although he apparently allowed his wigs to get rather ratty and misshapen because he was not very attentive to his dress.
Okay. I can see that. Charles has just typed Russian Jeopardy into YouTube, so I'm very curious to see what's about to happen.
If you look at the Russian version of Jeopardy, it's called Svaya Igra, and you'll notice that all the contestants
are
wearing square academic caps while playing.
And what's the Russian word for like a mortarboard?
Well, that's interesting. If you go to and actually finding good translations of things, Wikipedia is very good at that. Much better than a dictionary, I think, because you're working in concepts rather than just words. And it's called Kvadratnaya Akademicheskaya Shapочка, which means square academic cap.
Okay, so they just call it
square academic cap.
Okay.
Yes. And they have essentially the same information as from the English article.
But yeah, and so in Russian Jeopardy, they wear square academic caps and academic gowns, which is very fun. And they're purple.
Yes, and the idea is, of course, to show that they're being smart because they're on Jeopardy.
Right. And of course, you must be smart if you're wearing a square academic cap.
So it has this association outside of actual wear.
Right.
Of just...
It's also game shows.
Well, that was just an example. It has this association of showing you to be academically involved or smart somehow in a cartoon or costume element.
Right. And you know what? In a lot of commercials, you'll see, I'm Dr. Mattress. I know all about mattresses. Look at me. I'm wearing my mortarboard. Buy my mattress. That's not a real commercial, but, if you have a mattress warehouse, feel free to take it. I'll come and play Dr. Mattress for you. Yeah. No, it is visual shorthand for educated.
Yes. So like the dunce cap, although for the opposite association.
Right. Oh yeah, this is a nice little bookend to the dunce cap.
Yes. If you do very well, you can go from wearing one to the other.
Right. Or if you do poorly, you can go from wearing one
the other to the one. Right, yes. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen.
That's for something that there's a lot written about. Most of it was hyper specific and not terribly relevant to our conversation.
There is a whole world of medieval hats, but this is a fossil of medieval hats that has been brought forward in time without much specificity about the kind of hat. But also the thing about medieval hats is that there were infinite varieties, but made by individual hat makers without that much as now
awareness of what other hat makers are doing, right?
Yes.
It's sort of a regional thing. It's interesting. This has been fun and topical, right? We like topical. We like seasonally appropriate.
So as always, if you see someone walking down the street wearing a square academic cap, you think
you just graduated,
or you're going to the graduation.
Yeah. Oh, something we didn't mention: people decorating their mortarboards.
Oh yes,
I've seen that more and more recently. I don't think at my high school anybody did it, but I think high schools are a little stricter. I think at universities and things, you'll see people decorate their hats and get away with it.
Yes, at my high school, I think people did it. They would draw on them.
Yeah.
And things like that. And the university, often it's so large a ceremony that they can't really police it.
Right.
But people will do it. It's the same reason they decorate any hat.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's a good way, if you have friends and family and relatives up in the stands somewhere, they can say, oh, I know you. You put the thing on your hat.
Oh, and we didn't mention the one thing that people might say, why is it called a mortarboard? Well, another definition of a mortarboard is a board, usually square, used by masons to hold mortar.
And it looks like that.
Yeah.
It's a square board that looks like another square board.
Yes.
Yep.
Not much more to go into on that.
No, it's a pretty obvious
association, yeah.
Well, let's rate this thing.
Yes.
I think, as far as practicality, it has one purpose, right? And if you wear it outside of that purpose, you are
no practical benefit,
cartoonish. So I'm going to give it a 3 on practicality.
I think I'm going to give it a 5 because I count as part of practicality the necessity of having one if you're going to be graduating.
Okay.
You have to
3.5.
Yeah, you have to get it and wear it through the ceremony so that you don't make a spectacle of yourself by not having the right hat.
Right.
While you're getting... this is the epitome of the very specific kind of hat.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go up to 3.5 because it's true. You don't want anyone yelling out, "What a shocking bad no hat!"
Yes. And for style, though,
that's where I'm going to give it some points.
Oh, all right.
I think it's kind of stylish.
I think the ones that are less cardboard and cloth and that more correctly.
Oh, that's true. There's such a wide range. There's just like garbage that you've put on your head, and then there's, very well made, interesting.
But I think I'm going to give it a 5 then too, just in between those two levels.
And I'll give it a 5 there. So I'm going 3.5 and 5.
4.625. Not the best hat we've done, but it has a very specific use.
For a hat that is all about academic achievement, it got very low marks.
Yes, it did. But I will allow it to resubmit for a higher grade.
And then perhaps we'll let it graduate.
Yes. If you'd like to get in touch with us with any information, ideas, or other forms of communication that does not contain either of those.
Hard to do. Try it.
Write to hatcast@yandex.com.
We'd like to hear from you.
Bye.
Bye.
Land of hope and glory, Mother of the free, how shall we extol thee, who are born of thee? Wider still and wider shall thy cup be set. God